Bonjiva Cordia. Hello, everyone. Eimear Burke here. Welcome to another Fireside Chat. And this is Fireside Chat 144, where I'm in conversation with the member of the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. And as is customary, I will begin with a prayer for peace. Gamara Shiakon ar fud na crinne. Gamara Shiakon in our Jaili agus in our Jirha. Gunairi Lin, Len ar Quich Garmaka. Gangmij buchos Jeev, Je Chwiftaga, Spirit Gwiftaga. May peace prevail on earth. May peace prevail in our homes and in our countries. May our missions be accomplished. We thank you, guardian spirits and guardian deities. For peace, as the fever of day calms towards twilight, may all that is strained in us come to ease. We pray for all who suffered violence today. May an unexpected serenity surprise them. For those who risk their lives each day for peace, may their hearts glimpse providence at the heart of history. That those who make riches from violence and war might hear in their dreams the cries of the lost. That we might see through our fear of each other a new vision to heal our fatal attraction to aggression. That those who enjoy the privilege of peace might not forget their tormented brothers and sisters. That the wolf might lie down with the lamb, that our swords be beaten into plowshares, and no hurt or harm be done anywhere along the holy mountain. With thanks to John Donoghue, Irish poet and philosopher. So let me see where you're from. So West Yorkshire, deepest, darkest, Elmer's End, Kyiv, Ukraine, lovely, Wichita, US, Durham, England, wet, cold, Crouch End, Glastonbury, South Hampshire, Italy, New York, wonderful, Belgium, Michigan, Clare, where else are people from? Wonderful to see it. Sunny Ulster. Oh, well, it was sunny yesterday here in Kilkenny, but it's been fairly nippy, a little bit nippy today, and kind of wet, but drizzly. Back to our normal soft days of Irish rain rather than the torrential rain we've been having all winter. So just rainy Hertfordshire. Okay, so just lovely to see you. Where else are people from? Just lovely to see all these people coming in. Mexico, wow. Maine, USA. Springy Calgary. Hi, Sean. Bainbridge Island, Washington, Wisconsin. The Netherlands, France, Lille. Okay. Anyway, Chile, South London too. Norway, High River, Canada. Rheinbach, Germany. Soggy Slough. It's wonderful. The alliteration is lovely. So up into the Arctic Circle, let me introduce my guest to you this evening. Is Frances Joy, and Frances attends these chats. So Frances, it's a joy to have you.
Yes, thank you very much, Eimear, and good evening from here in Rovaniemi, Finland. I'm very happy to be here.
So it's nighttime, it's 10 o'clock, and you said it's kind of almost dark. So what is it like where you are in the Arctic Circle? What's your landscape like at the moment? And I know obviously
I would say that it suits my personality, which means it's quite a bipolar sort of place. So I can understand why I was guided to come up here and to work and study. So it has these two extremes of the beautiful summertime where we have sunlight and usually warm weather, 24 hours a day for the whole of June, a little bit of July, and then in the winter time, the month of December, from around the 10th of December till about the 10th or the second week of January, we don't see the sun. It doesn't come up above the horizon. So we get these two really extremes, but we have what they call 8 seasons here in Lapland. You know, we talk about the 8 festival times that we have in the Druid tradition, but in here we have the 8 seasons, and it's very beautiful time, especially the autumn, which is really to be seen, to be experienced.
So, I mean, I've loads of questions, but just tell me about the 8 seasons. That's the first one. What are the 8 seasons?
Well, we've got the the time of winter, spring, summer, and autumn, and then in between that we've got the arrival of the first snow. We've got the Karmos, the polar nights. Then we've got the thawing of the snow, and then we've got the return of the sun. So there's a whole cycle that goes around, and they vary in different areas. If you were to ask the local Finnish people up here, they would give you one explanation. But if you were to ask the Sami, the indigenous people here, they would give you something else, because their 8 seasons revolve around reindeer herding. So it varies in different areas. You've got the Swedes, the Norwegians, and the Finns, and then you've got the Sami people in all the 3 nation states, or the Nordic states here in Fennoscandia.
Wow. And so I'm just thinking of, there's many questions. So okay, I'll come back to that. How do you manage, that contrast? Like you talk about, I mean, I don't know if you were being flippant by saying bipolar, or whether you have bipolar, I don't know. But that dark 4 weeks in December where you see no daylight, what effect that has on your mood, and what does the constant daylight have at the other side of the year? What is that like?
Yeah, it's intense. I have 2 bicycles. I have one for the winter time and I have one for the summertime. So I kind of try and stay active. My winter bicycle has metal spokes in it for what we call winter tires, and the summer, the bike is a regular bicycle for the summertime. So I like to keep the energy moving, getting out and doing exercise, and it's important to make sure that you have got access to light and eating and resting properly. I think about nature's cycle and that stillness and that restfulness of the winter cycle, and then in the summer that time of energy. So I try and work with those really and see what comes. And one of the things that I've learned to do is to if there are any difficulties with the mood, is to try and put it into poetry or something similar. So there's a way of trying to transmute or transform it, so that it can be processed. I can process it that way. But initially when I came to Finland, I lived in Helsinki area, in the metropolitan area, for 6 years, and the winters in those times in 2004, 2005 were really cold. It's got quite mild now to what it used to be, but it was very intense, and it was difficult to handle for quite a few years. But I've been up here in the Arctic Circle now for nearly 14 years, so I'm kind of quite well adjusted to it. But this winter we had like -40. That was very, you don't want to do much. You just stay in and eat and do the basic things when it gets like that, because there's really not much going on. So
Because we have members here from Canada, and Jane, who's here, she has animals that she has to feed, even if it's -40 in Canada. I mean, I'm always the lowest I've experienced is -17 here in Ireland, which is rare. That was 2010. But yeah, Sean McCann, he says they get -40 in Canada. Now, I'm interested because I love the idea of being able to, draw in for the winter months, but the way I live my life doesn't allow it. I'm less busy than I used to be, but it's still really hard. So is it easier? And like in North America and Canada, people just still do it, still have to go to work, blah, blah. Is there a different worldview among the people living in the Arctic Circle that it's accepted that it's a slower pace of life during the winter months?
it depends really. I mean, the guys that work in the construction industry, when it's over, they're on roofs, and when it's over -25, they get paid some extra money. So it's like they're very resilient. I mean, it's just when this year, because the winters have been up and down, they've been really mild the last sort of 7 or 8 years. But this year was an exceptionally cold one, and people were in awe about it. And the locals were saying, this is just normal for us. But that normality has been shifted because of the climate change. So it's those intense. When I came up to Rovaniemi in 2010, the temperature went down to about -25, and it stayed there for about 3 months consistently, and then it started to warm up again. So from -25 to 35, that was slight fluctuation. But then, as the spring, we moved towards spring, it did get a bit mild, but still very bitter, long, cold days. And that's been like that for a long, long time. It's only now that there's been experiencing rain in December and even January and February, which it's really unusual.
Okay, and how? So just a question from Gabriella: how does a lot of sun versus a lot of darkness affect the Wheel of the Year ceremonies? What do they look like, and how is regular ritual affected?
Well, the festivals from around Beltane onwards are about the same as what we have in the UK, but of course, the snow came in October here in southern Lapland, and in the northern Lapland it arrived in September. So
Oh,
things are quite shifted. And when it comes to like Imolc, we've still got -25, -30 degrees here. So we may be 6 or 8 weeks behind in that winter and springtime up to around Beltane, when usually the snow has begun. It's melting away now as we're coming towards the end of April. But usually those early spring and late winter, early spring festivals can be shifted by it.
wow. Liz has a question, so I'm not familiar with this. She says, do you adapt the element direction animal correspondences? And if so, how?
Yeah, it depends. I don't use the local traditions because that would be appropriation. But I work with the druid animal focus for what I have, and I have other helpers that I have personal to me that I work with in different ways. So, like in the inner grove, there's a different focus from let's say, the seasonal traditional focus for the animal helpers. But here, like we use the bear in the north. We have bears here. We don't have them in the UK. So we've got that energy that's here, and I call it the Northern Kingdom. The Northern Earth. I was just thinking if I can come to I could speak a little bit more about that actually, maybe a little bit
Yes.
later when I speak about entrance into the druid work.
Great. Well, do it now. It seems it's
Yeah.
appropriate.
Okay. So I belonged. I was initiated initially into the druid work in Avebury. I think it was in 1997 by Philip Shawcross and Emma Restelor at an autumn equinox ceremony in the big circle there. And I didn't think too much about it, but I thought this is great. At the time I was really searching for a pathway. I was already studying tremendously the Native American books, reading about spirituality, sweat lodges, etc., and really didn't know anything at all about the Druid traditions. But I used to visit Avebury as often as I could, and Glastonbury, of course, because I was living in the city of Bath for 10 years. And I met there the Philip and Emma that had done this ceremony with the British Druid Order. And then after that, I met Mr. Rook, our friend Adrian. Yeah, and I was invited then to a Debuni ceremony at Stanton Drew. That was, I think it was about 1998. And I went there, and then from there I was invited to a private ceremony at Ronald Hutton's place in Bristol, and that was the work. Things began there. I started attending the Druid camps there in Gloucestershire, and then the BDO were doing stuff at another camp called Rainbow. So it was like, wow, and I didn't know anything about my own spiritual traditions or cultural heritage prior to that, because growing up as we did in school, it was like, you learn about Christianity and the major, what we call man-made religions, but I didn't know anything about our own traditions, our own native or local traditions. So the fact I was from the north, I'm from the north of England, from West Yorkshire, it was like, wow. And I started then, reading. I went to university, to Bath Spa University, and studied comparative religions there. Took the professor from the religious studies faculty to one of our ceremonies at Stanton Drew with the rest of the class. They were absolutely blown away, because they didn't know anything about it either. So, and I worked through the Bardic grade there as a first port of call, and then when it came to the ovate work, I was initiated from the Debuni Grove into the ovate grade, and then the focus being the north. 10 weeks later, I was in Finland.
Wow.
It was like kapoof. So
Wow. Before we move to Finland, Valentina says hello. Francis from the Rifleman Pub in Glastonbury.
yeah, thank you. Hi, Valentina.
So you're still remembered. So what that's a big move from Northern England down to Bath, which is kind of southwest. What brought you over up up so far up north?
Well, I was born in a place called Keighley in West Yorkshire, and I was a mill town, an industrial town there, and the childhood wasn't so good. Our father was a World War II veteran, and he was a Royal Marine Commando, and took part in the Normandy invasion, and he had quite bad PTSD as a consequence of it, and the way that he dealt with that was drinking, as a lot of veterans do. And so all the men in the family had been veterans. My mother's father was killed in Normandy. He was a paratrooper with the 6th Airborne Division. He's buried out there. And so I grew up with this very kind of, that was the focus. So I thought, I'm going to go to the army, and I tried. I enlisted. I started to train. I enlisted as a recruit with the parachute regiment, and went down to Aldershot to begin my training, and subsequently injured my knee. I'd trained about 6 months before I went in there, and I'd injured my knee running up a hill with a log. And but I loved it all. It was like all that energy that was there from both sides of the family. And so anyway, I kind of decided to make some lifestyle changes. I was also a rugby league player. I grew into that from amateur boxing, because you could, you didn't have to keep your weight down. And so I went through all these kind of, sport things and stuff. And then when I got to 29, I hit a bit of a rock bottom, and the things that had happened during the childhood started to emerge, and it wasn't good. And so I had to reach out and go and get some help. And as a result of that, I ended up moving away from West Yorkshire down to the southwest of England, and set up a camp there, basically. And so I didn't know anything, it was like an industrial mindset. And when I got down to Bath, one of the things I noticed about it was a much softer place than what I'd grown up with. And I ended up going there to university, and then got an opportunity as an exchange student to come to Finland to study. And so that was the road, the pathway here, really. So I must also just mention that what happened was that something significant happened actually when I was in Bath. I went into a charity shop, an Oxfam charity shop that was there, and I found this book. It's called Shamans, and it was on sale for £3.19. So I thought, that looks interesting. I'll take it home and have a look at it. And then I stuck it in the bookcase. I thought nothing else about it. And when I started my education at Bath Spa, there was a professor visiting from the University of Helsinki called Juha Pentikainen, who was a professor of comparative religion. He was the editor of this book, and some of the pictures that are in it, he was showing in those days, it was overheads. He was showing these pictures on this overhead, and I recognized them as being from this book, and they were to do with Siberian shamanism. So anyway, I talked to him, and he said, well, we have this exchange program. If you want to come over, do. And then the money came. I got a student loan, and I ended up going over there for 5 months as a student of his. And I knew when I came back to England that I had to go back there. I knew that there were certain things that happened which were really like far out, and supernatural things started to happen both in Bath and also when I got to Helsinki, and so it was a very, very intense time.
Can you give
Looking
an
back on it.
example? Would you be happy to share an example of one of those experiences?
Yeah, one of the things that I used to really enjoy was doing the 5 rhythms dancing. I don't know if you're familiar with
Yeah.
Gabrielle Ross 5
Yes.
rhythms, and we used to go to Bristol. In those days, I was close with Dawn Morgan. I don't know if you know Dawn. She's a 5 rhythms teacher from Stroud, and I'd been dancing there. I think it was like autumn equinox celebration at this old church hall in Bristol, and I came home to Bath, and I was laid in bed. There was this man standing through my body and looking at me. He was about 3 meters tall with a beard and these brown eyes, and he was just looking at me. And I kind of looked at him and I said to him, as long as you haven't come to cause any trouble, everything's fine. You can stay. And he was just still. He was just silent. And I thought, that's really bizarre. Anyway, I went off to sleep because I was really tired. And then it must have been about 3 months later, I was at a festival, Rainbow 2000 gathering in the Forest of Dean there.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a big teepee that was erected, and we were all drumming in there. And one of the things that I'd started doing with my work was studying about plants. And I also make incense. I'm an incense maker. I've been doing that for many years. And I'm putting these this stuff on the fire, and there's drums going and everything, and it was really warm. And I thought to myself, I'm going to go back to my tent and change and put some shorts and a vest on. So I went back, got in the tent, changed my clothes. I was zipping the tent up, and I saw something. I looked up in the sky, and this man is there about 20 meters tall in the sky with his arms out, with his big smile on his face, looking up the stars, and he had a pointed hat, and then he disappeared.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, that's incredible. And he changed his size. And I thought to myself, that's pretty amazing, and he knew somehow he was following around. He knew what was going on. And I think he was a wizard of some kind, and so that was like, I didn't really know what to make of it at the time, but I thought, well, I didn't notice which direction he was looking in, but he was just looking upwards. But I saw the smile that he had on his face. It was enormous, and he was standing up there in above, way above the earth. It was really quite something. And so anyway, I came to Helsinki, and I met this guy who was a blacksmith, and I said to him, I've got this wand that I need a case for, and I wonder if you could do something for me. And he said, yeah, sure. And he made me this beautiful red leather case for this wand that a member of Dabuni made for me. And I was in an apartment in Helsinki there on the close to the main thoroughfare. And I put this wand case in this cupboard and left it there. And then the following night, I was at the sink doing some washing up, and I saw something move. And this dead woman came straight up through the floor in a death shroud and then disappeared. And it was like, and I thought to myself, it was the feeling was dreadful. And I had to contact somebody who I know in England to ask for some advice what to do to clean the apartment. But anyway, those are just a couple of examples of, some of these things that started to happen with this, this work in the Druid tradition, and also what I was doing in terms of like meditation and prayer work and awakening in my own way to, to this new way of life.
It was lovely that you, your first two experiences were positive and not frightening, unlike the third one where that was the woman
Yeah.
that needed to be, held and sent to wherever she needed to go. That was
But
beautiful.
what I didn't say, Emma, was that my one case disappeared.
Oh, on that night.
Yeah. On that night. Well, I went to look for it a couple of days after it completely gone from the apartment. And when I told this guy, the guy who made it, he was terrified. So
And you've never seen it since. It never turned up.
I had to get him to make me a new one. So
Wow.
yeah.
And Linda, who's in Australia, Norfolk Island. I had an experience on top of Haleakala in Maui, where I became a huge person who reached right up into the sky. Interesting.
Mm.
And Georgie says, Catherine says, who actually is not far from Keeley, by the way.
Okay.
Druid can open you up to the spiritual realm. If you're not used to it, it can be a bit scary. And Leslie Harvey, hailing from Blackwater Bridge in Kerry tonight. She's usually up in Tandragee, Northern Ireland. Had a dog called Keeley once because that's where I bought her. So Keeley is on the map, certainly on the map of Obod. So
Right. I think in the old days the Briganti tribe was up there in that
yeah.
particular area. So there is a connection around that northern area. It's West Yorkshire or that part of the country. From what I know, there was a grove up there actually called the Brigants. I don't know if it still exists, but certainly in the 1990s, there was a lady called Teresa. Maybe somebody remembers her. She was like the grove mother, I think, from there. So there has been stuff going on up there, and I think also as well from a place called Scarfell in North Yorkshire. Some years ago, they found a shaman's mask made from a deer, frontal lobe of a deer, and horns on it, and it had eye holes in it, and they found it somewhere in a cave, and I think now it's in the British Museum. But that's from that not so far from where I am, maybe 100 miles or so.
Okay. And Rachel here says she's in West Yorkshire. Yeah, it's fascinating. So the first two were positive experiences for you, and what was your sense of who these beings were?
Well, I mean, what I didn't say was that when I was living in Bath before I went to the university, I went to Bath College and I trained as a holistic body therapist. And one
Okay.
of the ways that I also tried to work with healing myself was I was involved in spiritualism for 10 years. And not a lot of people don't know this, but when the Witchcraft Act was enforced, that 300-year Witchcraft Act from about 1650 till 1950, a lot of the witches that had these mediumistic and clairvoyant abilities used to sit together in the spiritualist circles. And that was one of the ways that they could support each other and channel and help each other and receive messages from the other side. So I ended up going to this. Initially, I went for some healing because I'd heard like this, you can give a donation and get some healing. And I was really quite badly depressed for many years because of what came up from those early life experiences. And so I went looking, searching for ways to try and heal myself to get the help that I needed. And I ended up spending 10 years and I trained as a what they call a survival medium, which is proving the existence of life after death. And I sat for development at Bath First Spiritualist Church. And, when I heard about the connection that we have, spiritualism was imported, of course, from the US, but in these industrial working class northern towns, there were these little spiritualist churches in many places. There's one in Stroud, there's two in Bath, or there were two in Bath. So it was a great place, and of course, the spirit world is so close to that work, and it was something that I felt really familiar and connected with, and learned not to. First time I went there, I couldn't sleep. I was terrified, it's like I was lighting candles and, like it was terrifying, but gradually that fear subsided. And then I went a little bit deeper into the work and, and I read about how these guides would come through, these teachers, etc., would come through, and it really was quite something. And so I used to do demonstrations of clairvoyance for groups, and sometimes at the church. I still do it, actually. I was working last year up in northern Sweden, doing readings and stuff for people there. So, but anyway, and because of that, I started doing healing. I got into Buddhism, and there'd be guides that had come and help with the healing on the clients and stuff. So I'd had, various things that were happening, and it was so difficult to function, because it was so overwhelming. What was happening, it was like to have a normal life was such a struggle. And I spent a lot of time sleeping, of course, which in those times I was doing a lot of work, out of body work, with learning how it goes.
You mean
But anyway,
you were sleeping? Is that what you
yeah,
mean?
the learning was like the personal experience, like what they call rescue work, which was going and finding these souls that were trapped. And again, when we talk about shamanism, we talk about psychopomp work and soul retrieval work in the spiritualist organization. They call it rescue work, and they perform a similar. The rescue mediums perform a similar, either in a trance state or they do it in sleep, working out of body. And there's some real parallels with shamanism in that work, except with the shamanism, they tend to use the drum, whereas in spiritualism, they tend to maybe they'll use deep music, or of course, if they're asleep. So we have. I'd never heard really much at all about this when I was up in the north of England, but when I came to Bath, Bath was designed by John Wood, who was a druid, and his son, and so there's this incredible power that's there. And you've got Salisbury Hill up there, and there was an old Celtic hill fort that used to be up there, and then you've got Glastonbury this way and Avebury that way. So it's right on those pathways, those dragon path, those ley lines. So it was, it was like a place for me. When I look back on it, it was a place of initiation.
Wow. And Jane, who is in Canada, but she's from Manchester, there used to be a few of those churches in Manchester too, I assume. And then still one in Crouch End, that's Philippa. So I hadn't heard the term rescue mediums. I'm aware of, I've been at conferences with the British Spiritist Society, and they would talk about spirit attachment, and they have spirit release was the where in shamanism it would be extraction or soul retrieval, that kind of thing. But it's lovely. And Liz says, yes, it's great. There's all that interconnectedness again. It's just wonderful. And Gabrielle has a question for you. Do you think you were a shaman in your past life?
I think I was probably up here in my past life. It's
Okay.
It's very with what's happened. It's very possible.
So when can you remember your first reaction when you landed up in?
I thought I wish I'd have bought some thermal underwear.
Apart from that one, in terms of, because I know when I first went to Africa, it's like I've been places. Oh, I've been here before. Yes, I'm home. Did you have that sense when you first went there, or is that a sense that grew with time?
It was more for me about the people being familiar.
Interesting.
And when I arrived up here in the north, I did a master's degree. When I came to live in Finland, I moved to Helsinki, and I did a master's degree in prehistoric rock art and shamanism, which was research at a rock art site that's about 300 kilometers actually from where I live, in a place called Kainu. And I wrote this master's thesis on that, and I wanted to continue on because I felt that I needed to do it, but I couldn't find supervision in Helsinki. So I came up, as luck could have it, I met this lady who lived up up not so far from where I live now, about 80 kilometres away. I met her and we got involved in a relationship, and I came up here to see her. And then I learned about the University of Lapland. So I thought, well, I'll try there and see if there's any supervision. And I ended up getting a Sami professor, an elder, as a supervisor. And as soon as all that fell into place, the relationship fell apart. And it was like a stepping stone into what I needed to do. So I found some accommodation here, and then I spent 5 years with Elina Hellander Envall, she's a reindeer herder from Utsjoki, which is the northernmost municipality here in Finland, in Finnish Lapland. And Elina was my tutor for those 5 years till she retired while I was doing the work on a doctoral degree. And because of working with Elina, it kind of, I was a bit more accepted into the community. And another one of the things I wanted to mention tonight was one of the things that I'm really immensely grateful for in Dabuni and also in the Obod is the initiation stages, because when they found here that I'd been initiated, it opened some doorways. They knew I wasn't like somebody from a
tourist,
pretending to be a tourist, yeah. And when they were asking me, where's your background? What do you know? And have you been initiated in? And I said, yeah, I was initiated into, of course, the Bardic grade, which I worked through. Now I'm in the Ovate grade, and that opened, the differences. And it was like, and I said to them, look, we hear all this stuff about Westerners and this, that, and the other, but we have our own traditions and we have our own sacred sites and our own cultural heritage. And they didn't know. They didn't know about it, you see. So it was a case of informing them about that and saying, we have a similar history to what the Sami people went through, although they're a smaller society in Finland, about 10,000. But those colonial practices which stripped those traditions, we have it 2,000 years ago. Theirs was started around the 12th century, 12, 14, 15, 16th century. So we, for them it was much more intense because they were a smaller community. But for us, it was like the Romans, what they did to Britain, and then the Normans, Saxons, Vikings, and so what survived is remarkable when we think about what Philip's done and the other, elders in the order. So I was able to talk something about that, and they thought it was just like, oh, it's this new age stuff, and it was like, well, not really, it's not. There's a lot of tradition in that. Also, it's not neo druidry. It's like, which is like, this invented, made up stuff. It's kind of also based on tradition that all these individuals have done, and they've contributed, like Ronald's work, and then also, John Michel, Philip, particularly Ross Nichols, as we know. So I was able to talk to some of them about that, and they didn't initially know anything about it, and especially the Sami in Sweden and Norway, also, who I came into contact with through research work and attending some of the festivals over there. So, but anyway, it was quite something, actually.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think so much of ours is grounded in our landscape. Beautiful, beautiful. There's lots of lovely reactions to. Gabriella says, may I just say this conversation is so much alive, soothing, healing, thrilling, and a delight for the soul. And then Philosophical says, I second that, Gabriella. So so people are enjoying our conversation. So you being a druid up in the Arctic Circle, how do you then navigate the wheel of the year for yourself? Do you have any other? Are there any Obod members up near you, or are you the only one?
I'm the only one that I know of, and I usually navigate it here in my living room, or else out by the river somewhere, or amongst the trees and where the trees are. Sometimes I might go to a sacred site if I've got some transport to somewhere that's got a particular feeling to it and do a personal ritual there. But sometimes I've been fortunate enough. I was invited by some groups, one in Poland, another one in Estonia, and also in southern Finland around Helsinki, the metropolitan area, to do ceremonies. And I contacted Philip. I mean, this is 16, 17 years ago, and said, is it okay if I do these? He's like, yes, it's fine. So I started writing rituals as we used to do in Dabuni. I still have a lot of scripts here. I was looking at some of them yesterday. The first one was from 2001 with the Dabuni, and I still have them here. And so I was writing scripts. We'd get them translated into Finnish, and then we'd designate the people that were going to do the quarters and the different, herald and Mabon or whatever the ceremony was, and we'd reenact it so they'd get a taste of like the Druid tradition, because again the Finns were subject to the destruction of the Finnish pre-Christian religion, which was very much based on the forests here and the water. There's 180,000 lakes in Finland, so it was like a meeting place between people and cultures, but here in the north it's it's quite different, because we only have in Finland there's a 5.5 million population, but there's this huge landmass that's here, but still the forests and some of these areas are really, really very beautiful, and the national parks particularly. So, and while I was here, I undertook 9 years of training in shamanism with an organization in the southeast of the country called Shamaniseura, or the Shamanic Society of Finland, in addition to the Druid work. And it was based predominantly on Michael Harner's core shamanism, which again is it's quite different from neo shamanism, is more or less invented, but the core shamanism is close to the traditions, the traditional ways, and working with outer body journeying and power animals, allies, helpers. So I spent time there working with them, learn how to make drums. I've been in Estonia with them together, and I've a Sami friend up in Kiruna, which is way up in northern Sweden. He's a drum maker, and we've done stuff together. So there's been a kind of richness to it as well, learning these basic things and having one foot in that life and then another foot in the academic world, So, but that's what I understood people are being called for. In 2013, I went to Siberia. I went to a place called Irkutsk near Mongolia, and I got a chance to visit this revered Baikal Lake, which is a real strong association with the shamans, the Buryat shamans, particularly from that area. And I was presenting there about my research with the rock art, prehistoric rock art sites here in Finland. And so, one of the things that I learned again was that this kind of this northern area, that we're all, one of the things that we share in common with the people of Siberia and the people here is this constellation under the bear, that we're all underneath it in these northern territories, these northern areas. And so the bear is really, it's been like an ancestor here for the Finns and the Sami, and then all the Eastern European into Russia, into Romania, Estonia, and then way down into Siberia, right towards the east there. And so there's a lot of folklore and oral narratives and myths that are all around that, and I talked to them about our focus for the bear in the winter solstice and what that means to us, and they didn't know any of this. So it was a meeting place for us that we could share these what we've got in common with each other.
Wonderful. Gabrielle has a question. Did you have any supernatural experiences with the landscape from Siberia or Mongolia?
Yeah, one of the things that I did, I took a bull roarer.
Yeah.
And I was I made some offerings to the Baikal Lake as you do when you go and visit somebody else's land. I took some crystals from here, offered them to the lake. I lit some incense, and I was swinging a bull roarer, and an eagle came down to see what it was right above where we were. It was mind blowing. It was like hovering around, listening to this bull roarer noise, and that was like people were a little bit spooked by it actually, but it was a beautiful experience.
Wow, that is fascinating. And I think many members talk about things like that, how nature comes. Um, you know, uh, I don't know what I did there. Sorry, apologies. Are you there?
I'm still here. Yep.
I thought I don't know what I did. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry,
No worries.
but when I asked you, are you on your own? And you said you are. And then Sean said, McCann, who's in Canada, actually all the animals, the birds are members of OBOT as well. So you are actually not alone. And I thought that was really nice. And that,
Yeah.
of that eagle coming down as you're doing the thing with the bull roar. And Oswald says he loves your owl shirt. It's quite impressive, actually, your owl shirt.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. This is one of my pride and joy, so I wanted to wear it for tonight because they're such beautiful, incredible birds, incredible animals.
So, I mean, there's so many things you do for, it's almost like because you're very quiet spoken, and I don't know if you always spoke like that, or is that the effect of being in Finland spending so much time on your own in the winter, and you've gone quiet, but you're a really busy person. You do really interesting things. But I know you've written 3 books on poetry, and I know you promised that we could start with one poem to start with, and then we'll get into the other interesting things, the projects that you're involved in.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, fine. Yeah. This was the first book that was published in 2021. It's called A Book of 100 Poems and Magical Verses. So, in
Okay,
addition to poetry,
I'm going to put this in a book of 100 magical experiences.
poems and
100
magical
poems.
verses
So a book of 100 poems.
and
It's like
magical verses.
magical verses.
Yeah.
That's it by
Yeah.
Francis.
Yeah. And they're not available on Amazon or any shops. I just got a small amount published to give, to sell locally. I still have some copies, but I'm just finished the 4th one now, and that should be published hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But give you some idea, this is the winter landscape with there's a
Beautiful.
woodshed there with the aurora borealis and deep snow,
Lovely.
and then on the back cover we've got a picture of a river there. This is probably late winter time, I would think. But anyway, I'd like to share one of the poems with you. As I mentioned, I'm born in September, so I'm a kind of an autumn person. I'm a double Virgo, which tends to drive people mad regarding perfectionism and all the rest of it. So, but anyway, one of the things that I really love about here is there's so much richness in these seasons, and the colours that are there in these eight different seasons, and I'm a kind of a very much a sunset sort of person. So, but on that threshold between day and night.
Beautiful.
But this is a poem called Sunset in the Autumn. As the small pools on river's edge morphosize into icy mirrors during the hours of darkness, the radiant autumn sun smiles silently, knowing his soft, fiery breath will restore them back to vibrant thawed liquid at noon the following day, except, of course, for those hidden in shadow that love to sleep and be still, awaiting the long slumber of winter, whose long, thick white coat would keep them hidden out of sight. The ravens and a solitary owl who watch over the tidal river sing as the sun begins its ascent towards the horizon and the breaking of the first light of day, applauded rapturously by the clear frozen dewdrops who cast rainbows upon the river bank with their tender glistening smiles. The last of the golden wheat dances merrily in the field located towards the east, knowing soon their fate will arrive. yet they still breathe deeply with a sense of joy at what the Great Mother has provided regarding their lives and how strong they stand, knowing in what ways the many hungry mouths that will feed on their seeds form a platform as part of their journey back into the realms of their ancestors as their annual succession completes itself, shedding yet another life cycle. Working together as a team, the cool, crispy morning air and soft autumn light whirl their passions in accord in the sky high above the earth. As the mist from their union descends back onto the big blue marble, the deciduous trees and plants begin to melt, championed by such a crispy, crimson catalogue of colour. Their coalition transformed the heartlands of forests, damp riverbanks and country lanes into poetry and magical art, which shall fall upon paper and canvases belonging to the sensitive souls who narrate their shapes and curves. Ripples of bountiful nourishment topple from turning fruit trees all around, their destiny to a moist and somewhat chilly, soggy ground, not fazed one bit by this descent onto the changing autumn plain, because they know that as nightfall arrives, their seed-filled hearts will smile at the stars once again.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Karen wants to know what a double Virgo is. I assume your sun and moon are in Virgo. That's what you mean by
Sun and
or
ascendant.
oh, your ascendant. Okay. And then
Yeah.
Gabriela says Virgos are not perfectionists. Everyone else is sloppy. A joke, except Leos. And I agree with her. They do everything perfect by default. I'm a Leo, but I'm on the cusp of Virgo.
Okay. Yeah.
So Natasha says that was absolutely beautiful. So lovely.
Thank you very much.
To your poem. So just tell us about I'm interested in them. Philippa says a wonderful word picture. Your sentient forest project. Just tell our viewers a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's been a struggle not being able to find any funding for my research for a long time. And so I met this professor last year from the US who was over here in the city of Oulu, which is on the west coast of Finland, northwest coast of Finland. And he was doing a seminar on plant intelligence. And one of the things that I've developed out here is to teach people how to communicate with trees. And there's a couple of techniques that I've developed myself, but there's also one that I've used that Scott Cunningham actually teaches in a book, which I also teach that. And I talked to him and I said, look, the forests here, like in many places around the world, but particularly in Europe, are being decimated because of, the EU policies. And then the local in Finland, it's a big paper industry here, as it is in all the Nordic countries. And so we wanted to try and do something to show that trees and forests are valued much more than their economic worth. And so we wrote a funding application for a 2-year grant, and we actually got the grant last December for 2 years of work. And so we set up we had a research plan, obviously, for the funding application, and we set up a website where the details of what we're going to be doing, it's called sentientforest.com. You can find more about the project there, and we will in June this year do a weekend retreat where there'll be people working with plants. John, my colleague, works with plants. I work predominantly with trees, and we're going to show some of the things that we've learned and see what comes from it, and then document it as research data, as research material. And then also we're organising things like videos where there's a seminar, there's plant seminars, plant intelligence seminar that's coming up there's one on the 6th of May, and then another one on the 8th of May. I could post these somewhere if it's possible.
Are these online things?
They're going to be online, yeah, and they're free.
We'll put them in the OBOD members page on the members Facebook.
Okay, will do.
And if there's anything else, advertise them well in advance on Touch and touchstone, but do it in the OBOD, or contact Maria in the office, maria@druidry.org.
Okay, thank you.
It's
I'll
really,
do
really
that.
interesting.
Yeah.
And Jane says, Jane, who's in Canada, how fabulous that your work is seen as valuable and you're able to get grants for this important work. And Oswald says, very few sentient forests left in the USA.
Mm.
And Tasha says, thank you for your passion and important work. I will look at the website. I put the sentientforest.com in the chat there.
Yeah, thank you. There might actually be some. I think John, my colleague, tends to monitor the website, so he's probably put information there about these 2 upcoming seminars. And what we've got Irish Brook from Bath Spa University, who's a real expert in like plant phenomenology and different ways of approaching plants and trees, working with the forest. And one of the things that we talked about was trees and forests, not only in the wilderness but in urban areas, has been part of the cultural heritage of the local people and the children. And here that our issue, one of the issues that I'm working with is that there's a very traumatic war history here in where I am in Rovaniemi. In the Second World War, the German forces burnt everything. They burnt everything to the ground. There was a big war with Finland and Russia, and Germany was allied with Finland, and then it changed, and Finland and Germany were in conflict with each other, and so the whole of Lapland was burned. And so the trees that have survived are older than all the buildings, and they're cutting them down in the urban areas. And it's like, why are you doing this? And it's we couldn't understand it. And so one of the things that we've really tried to do, and what I work with anyway, is cultural heritage. And so bringing this focus in that the local people should have a right. So what's happened is that because there's been these really poor decisions made by the local council up here, and they've been cutting down all these trees that survived the war and some that were planted after the war. It's created like an outrage. And so now in Rovaniemi, there's a local residents association that have stood up to this council. And so now there's a decision about cutting some old trees down which survived the war to build this apartment block that's gone to the court for a decision, which I think is really great because it gives more visibility to the plight of these trees. And one of the things that we're talking about is memory. Our trees have memory. And one of the things that I want to investigate, this is something which came, I feel, from part of the ovate work, is that these trees that stood and witnessed this catastrophe here, what kind of resilience do they have spiritually for helping people who have trauma? What those that have survived, those trees that survived this catastrophic ordeal in 1944, that watched the whole city burning. How can we work with them in terms of helping people with PTSD and other forms of trauma, in terms of accessing the memory? How could we strike up some form of communication with these trees that have that kind of energy, that have that resilience in them, that would really help trauma survivors? This is one of my proposals. I haven't gone into it yet, but this is what came through. I've written it down as part of a research plan. If I don't get to do it this year, then hopefully next year. And I think that's a worldwide issue that we're not having discussions about, in UK, as you know, and also I know there's people here from Germany. Europe's been devastated by these wars in the last 100 years. So it's like these trees that have survived that, how can we harness that energy and try and use it spiritually to help communities and to help individuals that have been traumatized? In what way can we try and access and get them to open up and try and get them to work with us? It's a big question, but I don't think it's impossible.
I think it's a crazy idea, and I think it's
Yeah.
a lovely idea and a very important
Yeah.
idea. I used to teach in Tanzania, and I taught every year there for 20 years. And there was one particular year where I was teaching 6 hours a day, a 2-hour slot, and then I take a break for half an hour, and then another 2 hours, and then 1.5 hours for lunch and 2 hours, etc. But I was really sick. energetically, I just crashed. So what I would do the first day, I'd teach for 2 hours, then lie down and hypnotize myself just to rest for the half hour, summon up a bit of energy and teach again. And I couldn't change because I had just flown out from Ireland to Tanzania. And Howard, my husband, my late husband, who was a natural shaman, went into the forest and communicated with the plants and the trees who had had a similar situation to me, but had overcome it.
Well,
So he found a leaf from this side of the tree, a bit of bark, something else. And he came home and made a decoction, tested it on himself, bless him, first. Didn't kill him, and gave it to me. And I improved, but I wasn't 100%. And then he went out the next day, communing with different plants who had the same thing as me, had resolved it to a certain extent, and then had gone beyond. So there were 2 sets of medicine he got from me from those plants. He did not know their names.
well,
And I mean, that's a physical thing, but I think it's the same because you're looking at things holistically, that learning and tapping in to the resilience of the landscape, be it trees or whatever, really, really powerful. Crazy idea. It's revolutionary, but I love it.
yeah. And you know, one of the things that I thought is these trees are like elders. They're like the
Yeah.
local elders. They've got memory, they've got knowledge, and they just see them as like cardboard, you know, or paper. There's like no, you know, and this is the tragedy. This is the gap somehow, you know, that we've got to try and close down and say to them, you know, this, i.e., the sentience of the intelligence of them, that there's just no comprehension of it, you know. And I'd really want to open this up and say that, you know, wherever we are, whether it's people in Germany or in Belgium or in France or in the UK or here in Finland or in northern Norway, which was also burned, let's think about this, you know. And there's other countries. I mean, look what's happening now in Ukraine, but there's other countries also that where this is a form of resilience that this idea came from, definitely from the others, from the spiritual side. It just dropped, and I wrote it all down as it was coming through, and it was like I put the proposal to John, and he said, this is a really good idea, but we've got to think more and develop it, you know, because if you start talking about, you know, trees having memory and healing people and doing this, that, and the other, you could end up being taken to the mental hospital, you know. So you got to be really careful with
Well, if
you know,
they can heal you physically, they can heal you spiritually and
yeah,
psychologically. And of course, it's now recognized the importance of actually being out in forests. But the interesting thing is this, I'm just thinking about working with resilient trees.
hmm,
Uh, do you have to be in the presence of that resilient tree? So do you end up with people who are PTSD all coming up to where you are, being with those trees? Or can it be done energetically or in another way? I don't know, because I mean, that
yeah,
requires a lot of creativity and a lot of exploration. And as druids, we do things on the inner plane. How
yeah.
do we tap into um,
Well, one of the things that I've already started doing with that is these old trees. Some of them are 200 years old. There's a poplar, and there's some really old spruce and pine trees. They're mainly popular spruce, pine, and then there's a couple of old birches. So they could be cut down at any time. So what I've done, I've gone around, I've photographed them all from close up and from a distance, and I've thought where this particular area, it's called Eimear, which means like the hospital peninsula in English language. Is there's like an entrance there. These trees form a kind of entrance. So using visualization from photographs and inviting people to journey into the gap and into we don't know what's going to be there beyond it. So however they manifest and show up energetically is what happens, what will unfold. So one of the things that I've done, I've also, on the railway bridge which overlooks this Cyril and Amy area, I took a photograph about 3-4 weeks ago to get all these old trees, and it's a lovely picture because the river's frozen, the surface of the river's all frozen, just so that we have that material in case there's a negative decision and they cut these trees down, you know, for this apartment block. It's an old the irony of it is, Eimear, that where these trees are was an old hospital, so it's got a connection with healing power anyway, and it's like, so trying to get that across and say, no, look, this is a really and it's by the river, like liminal space. It's like a really important area, and we say, what we want to say is, look, there's these different elements. Look at the location. It's a former hospital site. Patients have got power from these trees. They've seen them. It's helped them. Maybe people have seen them when they've been passing away, and they've brought comfort to them. And then there's people who've been rowing over there's a huge river here, rowing over there and landing on here. So there's memory, ancestors there, and these trees have been welcoming. And so there's all these different layers to it. And what we want to try and do is, grab somebody who would listen when the time comes, in hoping that these trees will be preserved, and that we could do some really, groundbreaking research there in terms of trying out these exercises there, whether it's from photographs, creative visualization, or whether it actually means taking a group there and doing some kind of meditation while they're laid down on the floor, by the riverbank, or a little bit further into where the old buildings are. Wow.
So it's just incredible. Yeah. And a lot of reactions here, just fascination with the project, and also sadness at such kind of willful damage to trees and landscapes.
Yeah, and it's kind of, I've listened to Philip when yourself, I know your meditation that you did on trees, it was a couple of years ago. It's on YouTube. That was really good. It was really helpful. And Philip talks a lot, of course, in his talks about trees. And I sometimes find myself getting really angry, because it's like, what do we need to do to get this across to these councils and authorities that these trees survive terrible things, and they are part of our cultural heritage. They're part of the local people's cultural heritage. Therefore, they should have a voice in decision making, and that there should be more rights given to trees, that they can be protected as the biological, or even, biological, historical, tangible cultural heritage that belong to the people, part of the identity. The Druidry is wrapped around it. Here, same with the Finns. The Finns, they were from the forest. They're forest people. All the Finnish, the Kalevala, the national mythology is all about the forests. The Sami mythology, the drums, that the shamans made, they take them from special kinds of trees that grow in certain circumstances and environments. There's these many layers of these connections, but there's like this blindness to it. It's complete blindness that's there, and it's like, somehow we need to shine that light in there and say, you're destroying your own heritage.
I often wonder, are these discussions held in boardrooms, and they're looking at PowerPoint presentations and projections, and looking at all the commercial value of these trees, or are they or do you bring them out and say, okay, let's have our meetings in the forest? And I mean, Marie-Elaine says, maybe turn this idea around and let the trees and herbs speak by using pictures or drawings. And I'm thinking, is it possible to have the meetings in the forest and say, okay, this is what you're doing. These will be cardboard boxes. These will be, packets of printing paper.
One of the great truths, and there's also some sorrow around this, is that one of the most important things up here in the north is, because there's so little employment, is finding people work and a livelihood. And if that means cutting down a forest and it brings an income in for somebody or a community, then that, like with the mining, that's what they do. And it's like, but it comes at such a price, such a cost, that those old traditions, the foundation of them, it's all been just hacked away, and there's no connection with that, because they don't teach these things in school. They teach the mainstream religions in school, but they don't teach about the local. They have Kalivala Day here, and of course, you know, the elders teach children and little groups in the Sami community particularly. But you've got all these seasons and this changing climate because the old forests are being cut down, you know, which is a great tragedy. So one of the things that we're going to do, this place where we're going in June, it's an old pine forest. There's trees up there 300 years old.
Yeah.
So we can, you know, we can see what we can do up there and see what, just go and see what happens. But the problem here is the urban areas. When you walk through the main streets of Rovaniemi city, there's like 3 or 4 old globe willows. That's it. All the rest are 20, 30 years old, you know, and they just hack them all down. And it's like the locals have been writing time after time after time articles to the local newspapers, and there's been a huge debate on it, you know, which is great. But they also, you know, of course they see it because it's like it's connected with their ancestral memory, you know. So the parks, they're cutting the trees down, the main streets, they're cutting the trees down, the forest, they're cutting. It's like, how on earth can this be, you know? So, but anyway, we'll see where this project leads us, and we've got on internet. We have a group of 13 of us on this retreat space in June, and we'll see, you know, we'll see what comes out. And then in September, I'm going to be one of the lovely things that I've been doing with the children here in one of the Steiner skills is that from Jacqueline Memory Patterson's excellent book called Tree Wisdom, I teach them take like 6 trees and talk about the myths, dragons and witches, and talk to them about it, and then get them to create artwork about what they remember, you know, and then they have like an exhibition, and it's a way of like generating these discussions on the links between trees and folklore, which they're not teaching at all in skills, but the Steiner skills very open to these, you know, to these things. And they've got like a nature-based education there, which is great. So we're hoping that will kind of elevate the work a little bit and make people think about the kids and trees, you know, that these are their cultural heritage and it's their future that's been eroded basically mainly for economic reasons. So
Hill says, I wonder if the forest gardening movement and permaculture movement might be helpful vis-a-vis preserving the forest and finding employment and meeting the people's needs. I mean, I think she makes a very good point, you know, when you're saying that there's so little employment. So if all that's available is to cut down the local trees for somebody to make some income, which is finite, because once you cut down the trees and the money is finite. Around looking at how it, you know, preserving the forests can actually generate income, that the income can be generated through preserving them, but that requires imagination and it requires will, you know.
Yeah, there's NGO organizations in Finland that deal with cultural heritage stuff, and they're asking for money to try and preserve what's left of the old forests. And you know, Finland is about 85% forest area, but the amount of old forests has rapidly declined. You know, so it's like what we're trying to do is to bring some of the spirituality, and they know about my work, they know I'm involved with the Druids, and trying to bring some of that and get that through to the local people, you know, because all that has been suppressed. The shamans up here were persecuted, the Teetayas, the sages, the healers, the Finnish healers, you know, they faced a lot of that, and there's small revivals going on now with little shamanic groups and groups that are nature-based, and people love to go walking in the forest, you know, but it really feels like these authorities have taken all the power, and that, you know, there should be much better consultation, but there just isn't up here anyway. The local people are just not given that they would even need to be consulted, you know. So it's but anyway, you know, and I think that from experience, it's you know, the kind of understanding that you know, trees are part of our identity, they're our cultural heritage, and that's the big one, is that it's not just a grand building, or a palace or a church, or it's also the old trees that are our cultural heritage, and that these sentient beings have that memory and that intelligence that we can, in shamanism, one of the main works of the shaman is that when they can't find an answer to stuff in this physical world, they go into the spiritual world to meet the souls of trees and plants and animals to try and find that information. These old trees have an abundance of knowledge and memory, and that's one of the reasons why it's so important to try and communicate of how valuable they are and why we need to save them, because they provide on that soul level stuff that they cannot be found here. I'll give you an example if I can.
Just
One of
before
my
you come on, is Gabriella asks, how can we help?
Yeah.
Just keep that question in mind if you
Yeah.
have any ideas. Go on.
Okay. So I have a friend who had some soul loss,
Yep.
and she went to see this woman shaman, and this shaman blew the soul of an oak tree into her body to help her heal a father wound.
Yeah.
Oak being a male polarity, and to strengthen her own masculinity and femininity, and it had a profound impact on her. That's the kind of stuff that can be done. It's not just about blowing a power animal in.
Yes.
It can be a plant. It can be a plant spirit. It could be whatever we need on that level,
Yep.
And so one of the things that I really like about what Philip talks about is the eyes of the imagination, and you've spoke about this also, Eimear, in the importance of the imagination. Up here, the imagination is like hoo-ha, it's like it's just something you're imagining, and that's as far as it goes. It has no connection to anything real or anything else, and it's like, so in relation to Gabrielle's response to Gabrielle's question is that showing that that spirit work happens in that realm, and that trees are very much a part of it, not just power animals or spirit human disembodied spirit guides, human disembodied humans, but also the trees and plants are a massive. They hold our world together. They hold the fabric of what we have here. So it's like trying to communicate that and not being, afraid to do it, and being we put this, what they were asking for in this funding application. They were saying we want these bold applications. So as you say, we put this really what we could be classed as outrageous application, and they recognized it, and we got the money. We got over 200,000 euros.
Yeah.
So it was a risk, and it was like, let's do it. And it feels like now they recognize these funding organizations, the crisis and they want in some some initiatives from people, and this is where we can come in and step into that with our different perspectives to what local councils and other organizations are doing. That we've got to bring that spirituality, bringing that out into everyday life.
Absolutely. Well, you got lots of support here. I suppose it's. I'm wishing you well with that, and I suppose it's to keep going and not. Liz's lack of imagination can be deadly, and I mean, I can't remember that quotation from Einstein. We would never have made any development or have any innovation in the world if we didn't imagine. Because you're imagining a preferred future, you're imagining a solution to something, you're imagining a poem or a song or a piece of writing, you're imagining a story. And imagination is crucial to our survival. It's not just wishy-washy, it's that it actually helps the world survive. Even business people imagine.
This has been one of the nice things about working with the children from the Steiner School, because it hasn't really been damaged, or pushed down, or of course, unless somebody's working a spiritual path, but they have that connection, but in the rational everyday business world, there's still, as there's a lot of work to do, but gradually it is happening, and So anyway, we'll see what kind of, when that information come about these trees, working with these trees that have survived the war. I knew then that this could be really that was guidance, and it was like, so how do we put this through, and when, and I wanted to share that because I would really like to invite other people to do the same in the UK or in Germany or in France, and let's bring that dimension into these discussions about trees, because it's missing. It's not there, and it's like, this is we can bring that in and say that, where's the research that's been done on what resilience these kind of trees have after surviving these horrible things that have happened, and what can they offer us? Excuse me.
So you mentioned you mentioned before we came on, your postdoc research. So what is that research about? Is it about just what we've talked about, or is there is another topic?
Yeah, part of it now is the sentient forest work, and then part of it is about I'm just finishing off writing 2 books on. One of them's about contemporary Sami shamanism and practices, drum making particularly, and then how oral traditions and myths, oral narratives have transmitted through art. And of course, there's some big holes and gaps in that because of the colonialism, what happened against the Sami, where the Sami people, where a lot of knowledge has been lost. So what I've been doing is interviewing the Sami people where they have a voice then through the research work. And I wanted to say also for my doctoral dissertation, if I can say, if anybody's interested, you can find this online actually. It's quite a big, it's 440 pages, but anyway, it's called Sami Shamanism, Cosmology and
Sami,
Cosmology and Art. Yeah.
You're going too fast. Sami shamanism and cosmology. Okay.
And art.
And art. So that's your book.
Yeah, and that's in PDF. It's in PDF format online. It can be downloaded, and there's some really good stuff in here. But this is, this is a doctoral dissertation. So, but the other two books I've got are like a continuum of this research also.
Wow, brilliant. Okay, wow.
And the other, if I can just,
absolutely.
So one of the fascinating things, I've been corresponding a little bit with Harriet, and and one of the fascinating things that I found, it really blew me away, was for those people who are doing the ovate work, is in the ovate number 4 Gwers, there's this thing on posture and movement.
You're not meant to say that.
Okay, sorry. Okay. I didn't know. But anyway, one of the things that I recognized was that when I was doing this research into this prehistoric rock art in Finland, I noticed all these stances that the Druids take. This ritual position is to be found all over these rock art sites that are between 3.5 to 7,000 years old. On the Gunderstrop cauldron, we've also got this character who's there, and I thought, what? And then on the Sami drums from the 17th century, there's these figures that have all got their arms raised, like these spirits and human beings. And I thought to myself, I wonder what this is. What's the connection that we have with this? And I mean, really, I wrote anyway about this, but that's another story. And I'm sorry, I didn't know I shouldn't speak about it. So,
but what does this look like? I've raised my hands a bit higher than yours. What do these look like?
They look like antlers.
Okay. All right. So this is a Druid blessing. Okay. Ban are the tines of the deer's antlers. Bannacht, the same word, blessing.
Yeah, it would make sense.
Just wonderful. So, can I have your? Do you have a website? So, if anyone wants to buy your books, so how do they contact you? Because they have to contact you directly.
So if you do a search on Francis Joy Wix, Wix, you can,
Francis. Okay.
yeah,
Francis
Francis
Joy.
Joy Wix,
Is
yeah,
that all one
you
word?
can.
Is
No,
that
there's a
W
space
between
after
Francis and Joy?
Joy. Yeah,
Okay, Francis
Francis
Joy is
Joy.
one word. And then Wix, Wiks.
Yeah, Wix is the web provider.
So it's just Francis Joy space Wix.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
and
Right.
that'll
That's
take to my own personal website. But
okay.
also we can be contacted through the Sentient Forest website as well.
Okay, and I've put that up. I've already put that up, sentientforestproject.com or sentientforest.com. Wonderful. Oh, it's Wix. It's Wix, not
Yeah,
Wik.
Wix.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry. Sorry.
yeah, no
I
worries.
better put it again. Wix, isn't that it? Okay. Sorry about that. So you have another poem for us before we finish?
I do indeed. I mentioned at the beginning about the midnight sun here and how the sun doesn't set fully in the summertime. And last summer I was here sat at the computer with the window open and there's trees in the garden, and there was a blackbird 11:30 at night cheeping away, and this is what came from the lyrics. This was the inspiration. It's midsummer's night, 11:30 p.m. I sit alone in my apartment, silent. The living room window is open. All is quiet outside, except in the garden. Somewhere hidden in a tree sits a blackbird, camouflaged by thick green leaves, whose singing is as soulful as a prayer. It comforts the air and colours of the garden, and seems to bless all who can hear her call. Even the newly forming apples, whose cheeks have not yet turned red, seem to offer praise at the light that radiates from such a small lantern. Hidden away in a crown of foliage, how the depths of such a chorus calls to the universe, reflecting the fullness of life on a night such as this, which is presided over by the watchful eye of the midnight sun, who looks on hazily from above the horizon. We have no idea what tomorrow might bring, but the presence of the feathered composer in the birch tree, formed and born from a tiny egg and fully grown into a mystical sage, who happens to stop by in my garden, justifies the need for appreciation, knowing that the season of summer in a little while is a richer place because of what travels through the airwaves, brings such joys by name and nature, shared effortlessly with all creation, and because of a free seat in nature's theatre, when a mating call shakes up the senses at a time when there is no nightfall. Therefore, who would not celebrate? And before going to try to sleep, drink a warm cup of cocoa and devour a large chunk of imaginary homemade chocolate cake before rising early next morning and going for a swim in a sensuous, cool, clear lake, whilst contemplating on how a legend visited my backyard, the presence of which is now a cause for warm reflection.
That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Just wonderful. And you have a third one, don't you?
Yeah, I have another one here. This is a midnight sun one, and then
Wow.
on the back you've got a 7,000-year-old shaman dancing
It's
on a
beautiful.
rock art panel. So this is called The Shape of the Forest. The seeds of a forest may be many and varied, reflecting life on earth, unmarried and buried, but it is the birds who are the transporters of such entities, the removal folks from Mother Nature who make sure they're ferried through the digestive system and dropped often from the sky in order to initiate and help support new life, which will emerge from all four quarters. From here on develops the architecture of what will become light and shadow and spaces in between, which in time will develop because of songs sang each season by a multitude of woodland lead vocalists bearing their gifts. a forest that is in reality deep, deep heart of the earth in which all kinds of things transpire. A place that the stars look down upon and smile at the ballads that emerge from such protagonists that form an earthly choir. They meet around thawed pools and by night reflect the light of the moon in a similar way to a deep cauldron that is half filled with water, into which their relatives, the gnomes who can fly, gaze into the darkness of a misty haze with their red and green attire. But the days, oh, blessed days, that will mean a vibrant northern earth once again, holding the potential for overflowing beaches and ice cream and fruity drinks in abundance with peaches, the smell of burning incense sticks and crystals reflecting rainbows in the kitchen all day as the sun makes its journey from east to west on yet another nocturnal expedition. And what about the forest cats, the mischievous furballs that chase the rats, birds, and bats, who hang rebelliously from grandmother's macrame above window boxes painted like the colour of foxes? Those unpredictable wild grimalkins who delight to ride on the front seat of a birchwood broom with their mistresses who travel to the moon, who love to hang from upon branches of trees at a startling 180 degrees, while boxing with fleas and spying on blocks of cheese upon the kitchen table, which stares on their mitten faces that are bizarre and uninterpretable. What about those nocturnal labours, the owls, the silent flyers, whose shapes and forms write hidden verses upon the air when they traverse anywhere, whether that is searching for food or venturing to see their family and mates, while searching for viper-like snakes and mice and frogs that hang around in fields and swamps and bogs. They too have their own compositions, consisting of feathers, colours, claws, and their deep and enchanting coos that sound as if they are bringer of news, where of their arrival and departure from within the forest architecture. In all cases, forest dwellers who form homes that look like cellars under roots of trees or among their sturdy trunks are all the Mother Nature's appointees who invoke different sources of inspiration that can be found within every nation, therefore confirming their special sanctity and its influence upon humanity in terms of seeking allies and helpers who, when relationships are formed, may choose to become as fortunate or fate tellers when encountered within the invisible side of nature, a place travelled to through prayer, where the forebearers of their kin dwell, and whose sentiments and love may propel one truly into different realms of wonder, which in turn bring power and transformation that truly draw veils asunder.
Wow. Uh, just one comment here from Philosophical. Your poems are vibrant word paintings. Absolutely. Um, so it has been just a joy. And Philippa says, these poems really draw a picture I can see and feel. It's been a joy listening this evening. Love that. Magical creatures everywhere. And you made a thing about the woodland lead vocalist. Somebody else commented on that. They've so much presence and groundness. Wonderful. It's been just a joy. And so before we finish, you may have said it, but what is your favorite season of the year in your seasons, which of your 8 seasons, and which of the ceremonies to mark the wheel of the year do you resonate most with in where you are up on the Arctic Circle?
My favourite time is autumn, of course, and my favourite ceremony is lunacy.
Oh, sorry, Gabriella, she went springing out south. She's always betting, and she's hit and miss in terms of her success rate. So autumn and spring. Okay, it's autumn and lunacy.
Lunacy, yeah.
Okay. Listen, it has been such a joy talking to you. I mean, I'm fascinated, and I look forward to, and keep us informed of your project and how it's going. And if you need to get, garner any critical mass support or whatever it might, you have an order that people would be interested. So just wonderful. So I allow you say good night, and then we can just look at the comments before you and I, because it's very late where you are. So I'll let you say good night.
Yeah, I feel truly blessed for this opportunity, Eimear. Thank you so much, and sending lots of love from here in the Arctic North to everybody, and see you next time.
Listen, thanks, Millie. Don't go. I'll just send you back into the green room and then I'll talk to you in a few minutes. So listen, thank you all so much. And again, as usual, I can't get to read all comments because they just fly and some I miss. But it's been so lovely to have you here and to be listening to Francis in his, what for me is a strange environment. I've never been up in the Nordic countries. So it's been just wonderful to hear about it and his passion for trees and holding on to the traditions up there and supporting it. So thank you all for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you next week. And just to remind you that our Bealtaine online ceremony for the order will be on Saturday, May the 4th at 7 p.m. UK time. But I'll hopefully see you next Thursday. Until then, be well. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Or if you're listening to a recording of this chat. So until we meet again, Slán go fóill.